Have you ever looked at a website you love and just wondered, how in the world is that built? Well, it might seem super complex, but the truth is, creating things for the web is way more accessible than you might think. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on HTML, which is the basic language that, believe it or not, powers the entire internet.
So I want you to think about three totally different things for a second. Imagine a sleek portfolio to show off your skills, a page for your favorite recipe, and maybe even a fun little game. They seem completely different, don't they? Well, they've got a secret connection. Let's dig in.
First up, you've got a personal portfolio. This is pretty much your digital resume, right? It's the place you can show off your work and your skills to anyone who might hire you. It's got to be clean, it's got to be structured, and honestly, it's a must-have if you're trying to get into the tech world.
Okay, next, picture a recipe page. You need a list of ingredients, you need those step-by-step instructions, and you definitely need a great picture of the food. It's something practical, something millions of us use every single day.
And last, a simple game like tic-tac-toe. It's interactive, it has to respond when you click, it's got some logic behind it. It's a perfect example of how the web can be used for just plain fun. So, what's the one thing that ties all of these together? Well, the secret ingredient, the one thing that connects every single one of these projects, is HTML. The best way to think about it is like this. HTML is the skeleton. It's the foundational layer that gives every web page its basic essential structure. So what is HTML, really? It stands for HyperText Markup Language. But all you really need to know is that its one and only job is to tell a web browser, like Chrome or Safari, how to structure the stuff on a page. It doesn't care about colors, it doesn't care about fonts. It just says, hey, this is a heading, this is a paragraph, and that's an image. That's it. This is the perfect way to think about it. If a web page was a person, HTML is the skeleton. It gives it its core structure. Then you have something called CSS, which is like the skin, the hair, the clothes. It makes everything look good. And JavaScript, that's the brain and the muscles, adding all the cool functionality and making things happen when you click. But for now, we're just focused on that all-important first piece, the skeleton.
So how do we actually build this skeleton? Well, we need to understand its smallest parts. And honestly, the best analogy is to think of them like Legos. You get a bunch of different little bricks and you can combine them in endless ways to build literally anything you can imagine.
So, every little piece of a web page is wrapped in what's called an element. And every element basically has three parts. First, you have an opening tag, like this P for a paragraph. Then you have the actual content, the words you want to show. And finally, you have a closing tag, which looks just like the opening one, but with a //P. That's the basic anatomy right there.
Now you can also put elements inside of other elements. We call this nesting. And there is one golden rule you have to remember. The tags can't overlap. You have to close the innermost tag before you close the outer tag. If you get that order wrong, the browser just has to guess what you were trying to do, and trust me, that can lead to some really weird-looking websites. And we can give these elements superpowers using what we call attributes. They're just little bits of extra information that you add to the opening tag. So for an image, the src attribute tells the browser where to find the picture. The alt attribute gives it a text description, which is super important for people who can't see the image. And width can control its size. These attributes are what make elements so powerful.
And here's a huge piece of advice, a real pro tip. Always put quotes around your attribute values. Now, sometimes your code might still work without them, but leaving them out can cause some really strange bugs and just makes everything harder to read. It's a super simple habit that's going to save you a ton of headaches later.
Okay, so we've looked at the individual Lego bricks, the elements. Now let's kind of zoom out and see how they all snap together to form the master blueprint for a whole web page.
So this right here is the basic structure of pretty much every single modern web page. I know, it might look a little intimidating at first glance, but let's break it down piece by piece. Each part has a really simple job to do.
All right, let's look at the key sections. That doc-typed HTML thing at the very top, it's basically just a historical thing that tells the browser, hey, use the modern rules. Then you have the head section. This contains all the behind-the-scenes info, like the title that shows up in your browser tab. And then there's the body. That's the main event. Everything you actually see on the page, all the text, all the images, everything goes inside the body.
So we've gone over the theory, we've seen the blueprint, and we understand the building blocks. Now it's time to switch from learning to actually doing. It's your turn to be the architect. Just like this quote says, you can read about this stuff all day long, but the real learning, the real magic, happens when you get your hands dirty and just start practicing. The best way to learn is by actually building real things.
So, where should you start? Well, try building that personal profile page we talked about earlier, or maybe a simple page for your favorite recipe. Any of these projects are a fantastic way to practice all the core skills we just went over.
And here are just a few final tips to help you succeed. First, don't try to build something huge all at once. Start small, get it working, and then add more features. Second, test your code in the browser all the time so you can see your changes happen live. And most importantly, just remember that making mistakes is a totally normal part of learning. I promise, every single developer out there makes.
So there you have it. You now have the fundamental blueprint for every single website on the planet. The building blocks are actually pretty simple, but what you can create with them is absolutely limitless. So the only question left is, what are you going to build first?